You're watching DD India Live. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. The Gulf Cooperation Council has called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza at the opening of a US GCC meeting in Riyadh on Monday. The GCC further called for ensuring access to all humanitarian and relief assistance and basic needs of Gaza residents.
We reaffirm the position of the Gulf Cooperation Council, calling for an immediate and sustainable ceasefire and the cessation of Israeli military operations throughout Gaza, including Rafah, and ensuring access to all humanitarian and relief assistance and the basic needs of Gaza residents.
Earlier, speaking at this meeting, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the most effective way to tackle humanitarian crisis is to reach a ceasefire.
We have seen measurable progress in the last few weeks, including the opening of new crossings, increased volume of aid delivery to Gaza and within Gaza, and the building of the U.S. Maritime Corridor, which will open in the coming weeks. But it is not enough. The most effective way to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, to alleviate the suffering of children, women, and men, and to create space for a more just and durable solution, is to get ceasefire and hostages home.
Earlier, Blinken met his Saudi Arabian counterpart, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, in Riyadh. Post-conflict governance of Gaza was on his agenda. Meanwhile, a Hamas delegation is heading to Cairo in Egypt to give a response on Israel's proposal for the release of hostages. Egypt's Foreign Minister Sameh al-Shukri said on Monday that he was hopeful of a proposal for a truce and hostage release, but that it was waiting for a response on the proposal from Israel and Hamas. Shukri was speaking on a panel in Riyadh with Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi, who said that the conflict in Gaza had turned Israel into a pariah state. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also urged Hamas to swiftly accept Israel's latest and extraordinarily generous proposal for a Gaza truce to secure a release of hostages amid a diplomatic drive to end the conflict.
We strongly support Israel in its effort to ensure that what happened on October 7th never happens again. But at the same time, we are determined to do everything we can to bring an end to the terrible human suffering that we're seeing every single day in Gaza among children, women, men who've been caught in a terrible crossfire of Hamas's making. And so maximizing protection of civilians, maximizing the support that gets to them, this is very much our focus. Now, the quickest way to bring this to an end is to get to a ceasefire and the release of hostages.
And DD India's Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
We do know that a Hamas delegation is now in Cairo speaking to senior Egyptian officials about this latest proposal. Now, I'll give you some of what is being reported about this latest proposal. It would see the release of some 33 Israeli hostages in the humanitarian category, that is, women, men over the age of 50, the injured, and also children. Now, previously, Israel said it would only have 40 people released. It's now brought that number back down, given that Israeli intelligence believes that there are only 33 people left in that category. Now, as part of these people being released, Israel would then release quite a large number, still that exact number unknown, of Palestinian prisoners, some of which are serving time for murder. Now, also this proposal, which Secretary of State Blinken is calling extraordinarily generous, would see the Israeli forces withdraw from a corridor that they have built, which actually splits the Gaza Strip in two, as well as allowing people back up into the northern part of the Gaza Strip, including men of fighting age. So certainly all eyes really will be on Cairo over the next few days. We do know that the Egyptians have invited an Israeli delegation also there to take part in these indirect meetings with Hamas. But certainly there is a lot of hope being pinned on this latest deal, especially, of course, by the families of these hostages. And as I said, really intense diplomacy right around the region amid widespread fear that if a ceasefire isn't put in place and if these hostages are not released, then the Israelis will go down into Rafah, and this could cause an even greater spillover.
A food aid organization called the World Central Kitchen is resuming its operations in Gaza. It's expressed a keenness for getting as much food into Gaza, including northern Gaza, as possible. It said that 276 trucks were waiting to enter via the Rafah crossing. It was also exploring a maritime corridor to deliver aid. Moving on, in other news, Russia has said that its forces have taken control of Semenivka, a village in Ukraine's Donetsk region, on Monday after a series of recent territorial gains. Earlier on Sunday, the Russian Defense Ministry had announced the capture of another village, Novobakhmutivka, close to the Okeretny town in Ukraine. This village was a focal point of the fighting in recent days. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky's recent plea to the international community has called for swift action in delivering crucial air defense systems and kick-starting formal discussions for Ukraine's accession to the European Union and NATO. Following the recent approval by U.S. Congress of a $61 billion aid package and the conflict escalating in Ukraine's eastern region, Zelensky has repeatedly pleaded for further air defense systems, particularly the Patriot system from the United States.
In my conversation with Mr. Jeffries, I underscored that Patriot systems are needed and as soon as possible. Also, our teams, Ukraine and the United States, are currently working on a bilateral security agreement. We are already working on a specific text. Our goal is to make this agreement the strongest of all. We are discussing the specific foundations of our security and cooperation. We're also working on establishing specific levels of support for this year and for the next 10 years.
The United Arab Emirates and Ukraine have completed negotiations for a bilateral trade deal on Monday ahead of its formal signing. As per a joint statement, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement will reduce tariffs on a range of goods and products, remove trade barriers, and ease market access to exporters from both sides. The agreement will also support Ukraine's recovery and rebuilding of key industries and infrastructure because of its conflict with Russia. The Gulf states started negotiations for a trade agreement with Ukraine at the end of 2022. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced on Monday that he will continue to serve as the country's leader. His decision comes days after the Spanish leader had abruptly announced that he was considering resigning from office after a Madrid court opened a probe into allegations of influence peddling and corruption by his wife Begoña Gómez. Spanish Prime Minister reiterated his wife's innocence and accused opposition leaders of spreading misinformation against his wife.
I have decided to continue as Prime Minister, to go on, if possible, even stronger as the Prime Minister of Spain's government. This decision doesn't mean business as usual. Things are going to be different, and I can guarantee that. That is why I assume in front of you my commitment to work without rest, firmly and with serenity for the pending regeneration of our democracy, as well as for the progress and to consolidate rights and freedoms. I assume the decision to lead the Spanish government with even greater strength.
A two-day G7 ministers meeting on climate, energy and environment began at Turin in Italy on Monday. Italy, which heads the G7 rotating presidency this year, is pushing for an agreement among the 7 wealthy nations to set a target date for the phase-out of coal in power generation. Such an agreement would be one step in the direction indicated by the COP28 United Nations Climate Summit that was held in Dubai last year.